Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Bex here today to do the reading habits tag. A lot of my videos lately have been very long, 20, 30 plus minutes in their final form, and I really wanted to do something that didn't involve a lot of prep, was a bit more chatty, and hopefully won't be as long in its final state. And I saw Anya over at Well Traveled Books had done this video. It was probably about a month ago now. I'll link her video down below. And I thought that was perfect because I can just share a bit about my reading habits. You guys can share some of yours in the comments and it'll just be like a chatty, fun, relatively quick video. If you're a frequent viewer of my videos, you may be thinking that something looks a little different. And if you caught on to the fact that this bookshelf is a different color now, that's the difference. That's the thing that's changed. So I have had a tan brown bookshelf here for years. I commandeered it from my partner a long time ago, but I finally bought a IKEA Billy bookshelf. So it is wider and it's at least a shelf taller. So I've been able to really make my books look pretty. I've got an extra room to grow. I will insert a picture of it in its final form after I had fun kind of fitting everything together. So not only do I have room for more TBR books, but I managed to be able to fit on the very bottom shelf all of my read young adult middle grade books. So everything above that bottom shelf is stuff that I either want to reread or I've never read before. And that very bottom shelf is stuff that I've read in that YA middle grade category. So it loosened up a bit of room on my other bookshelf that you can't see over here, where it just has all my read books, because that was starting to overflow a bit. So I'm really happy with this. It's just nice to have it in this room. And when I'm working, sometimes I'll just turn around and stare at it. I'm sure many of you can relate to the excitement and the satisfaction of getting a new bookshelf and getting it all set up and looking beautiful. But anyway, back to the main reason for this video, the reading habits tag. There does not appear to be an originator of this tag. They obviously exist out there somewhere, but the video has disappeared. This has 11 questions, so let's get started. Question number 1, do you have a certain place at home for reading? I do. It is this chair that I sit in when I'm filming most of my videos. Usually it's a little bit closer to the wall. I pull it a little closer to the bookshelf just to add a bit more interest in the shot, but usually it's kind of tucked back in the corner there. I've got a little side table, I've got this chair, the windows there, I've got a couple pillows, a blanket that I can use when need be. It's nice to have a designated area, although I do definitely read on our couch, in the bed. Those are also options, but this chair was literally bought to be sat and read in. Question number 2 is a bookmark or a random piece of paper. 90% of the time, I use a bookmark. I actually have a little container that my bookmarks sit in now on this bookshelf, and I have a wide selection of bookmarks, some of them made by fellow booktubers. I've got a couple of those here, these ones, this one, and I just kind of pick the bookmark that fits the book that I'm reading the best, since I do have such a variety to choose from. However, that other 10% of the time, I do just end up using a random piece of paper, especially when I get books out from the library and they give me the little slip of paper telling me when the books are due back. Usually I end up using that as a bookmark in one of the books, but I do have pretty bookmarks that I like to utilize most of the time. Question 3, can you just stop reading or do you have to stop after a chapter, a certain amount of pages? I usually try to stop either at a chapter break or like a page break when there's a bit of space between paragraphs. If I absolutely have to stop in the middle of a chapter, in the middle of a section within that chapter, I try to stop at the top of a page. So either the top of the left hand or the right hand page, just so there's a very solid spot where I know, okay, top of the page. I can't just stop in the middle because it's hard to figure out where you left off, because I do try to find a natural break, but I will not force myself to read 20 more pages if there's not a good stopping point. I will just read to the bottom of the page and start from the top of the next one next time. Question 4, do you eat or drink while reading? Yes, all the time. I love having a snack and a drink when I'm reading. I feel like it helps me focus because my mind isn't wandering as much because my mind is thinking about grabbing the drink or grabbing some more goldfish or crackers or whatever I happen to be eating. And then also the story. It makes me feel so cozy to sit in this chair or even just sit out in the backyard in the sun with like a nice alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage in the summertime. That is peak happiness for me, to be reading a good book with a cold beverage in the sun or like tucked under a blanket with a nice like yummy snack. Oh, the best. So yes, all the time. Question 5, multitasking, music or TV while reading? Absolutely no TV. I do not understand how people can have the TV on and still be reading unless the TV is being watched by someone else and you're not paying attention to it at all. But even then, your mind would still click in when certain things are on the TV and it would pull away from the reading. Like sometimes if I'm watching something on TV, if there's commercials, then I'll pick up my book and try to read during the commercials. But even then, your mind still gets distracted a lot more. So I would never ever watch my own TV show and read at the same time. Music though, I love listening to music while I read, but it has to be music that is not in English or just no lyrics at all. Anything instrumental, I'm down to have that on in the background because I find that helps me focus as well because it blocks out other things that are happening around me, whether I'm inside or outside. So I really like doing that because I do feel like it helps me focus as long as there's not English words being sung, because that's basically like having the TV on. Question 6, one book at a time or several at once? Usually several at once. Rarely am I only ever reading one book, and that's usually just because of how something has worked out. Generally, I have an audiobook going, a fiction book, and a nonfiction book. So I've got 3 different things that, depending on what I'm in the mood for that day, where I'm going, I can grab one of those, have it with me. I think that's a good amount. I don't really like having more than 3 on the go because then it can start to feel a little overwhelming, but I don't like just focusing on one at a time because I like having that potential for slight variety. Question 7, reading at home or everywhere? I read pretty much everywhere. I will definitely bring a book to like a cafe or even McDonald's. There's a McDonald's like a 30-minute walk from my house. So I'll just like put on a little backpack, put my book in there, maybe bring some other stuff with me, and I will go to McDonald's, I'll have a burger, fries, and I will literally just sit there and read my book. Usually it's pretty chaotic in there, but it's fine because I'm just kind of blocking everything out, enjoying my book, and I've got my snack and my drink. So I generally really like doing that. Sometimes I'll bring my book to a park, or even when I have like an appointment and I know I'm going to be sitting in the waiting room, I'll bring my book with me. Whether or not I actually pick it up depends on what's going on. But I like having the option of reading wherever I end up. I do generally do most of my reading at home though, but I am definitely open to bringing my book elsewhere. Question 8, reading out loud or silently in your head? 99% of the time I'm reading silently in my head. It's faster. It's just, that's how I prefer to experience the book. That other 1% of the time, if I am reading out loud, it might be because there's a paragraph and it might be confusing, and I think that if I read it out loud, it might make more sense to me. That's really the only time where I'm ever gonna read out loud. Or if there's something really funny or interesting in the book and my partner's around and I wanna read it out loud to him, that would be the only time, but I don't make a habit of reading out loud. I did more so when I was younger because I have a younger sister, and so sometimes I would read books to her when I was little, but that was a long time ago now. Question 9, do you read ahead or even skip pages? There have been times where if you're like on the left-hand page and something really dramatic is happening, my eyes will just jump to the bottom of the next page just to see like what words it can grab, and then it will immediately jump back. And sometimes I learn a little bit and sometimes I don't, but it's almost like my mind, I have no control over it, and because we're building up to this tense scene, I just have to look really quickly. I don't flip to the next page or anything. It's just that automatic, almost like, whoop, glance and see what you can find out. Yeah, skipping pages, no. The only time I might accidentally see something is if I'm just looking through the pages to see how long the chapter is, and I might like read the word at the end of the chapter, but it's not on purpose. And I mean, most of the time it's not a problem. But yeah, I don't ever intentionally skip pages. It's just that accidental reading ahead that happens sometimes. Question 10, breaking the spine or keeping it like new. I never try to break the spine. I rarely do. There are certain books though, the editions, it's just you have to even be able to really open them and read them. I'm not like mortally offended by breaking the spines, but I prefer to keep it looking a little new. Like if I give a book to somebody and the spine's not broken and they give it back to me with the spine broken, that's a no-no. You should be giving the book back in the same condition that it was given to you. But yeah, for me and my books, I don't like to break the spine, but if it happens, it's not the end of the world. And the final question is, do you write in your books? No. I used to be really offended at the thought of writing in a book, but plenty of other people do it, and that's fine with me. I've calmed down on that a bit. I don't like to write in mine, but it's totally fine if somebody else writes in their own book. And I do a lot of like thrifting for books at Goodwill and Value Village, secondhand bookshops. And sometimes it's fun to see that somebody else has written in a book, but I don't usually end up getting those books because I don't necessarily want what they're saying to influence my reading experience. But there is like a coolness to it to see that somebody else has written in their books, even if I never write in mine. That's it. Those are the 11 questions for the reading habits tag. If you have any comments on what I said for my answers to any of these questions, or if you want to talk about one of these particular questions and how it relates to you, please feel free to do so in the comments below. As always, all of our links are in the down bar. You can go check those out if you feel so inclined. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you later.